Hello, friends. Welcome back to Reiki Crossroads and Connections, where we're exploring pathways and practices that help us to live lives that are grounded, spacious, connected, and that help us to remember ourselves. We do that through conversations between a Reiki teacher and practitioners of a wide range of magical, artistic, creative, and wellness arts, and the occasional farmer and engineer thrown into the mix for good measure. And we're doing that to really explore the ways in which our lives can be enhanced by digging into fields that we might not have experienced before and finding the connections and the uniquenesses in those fields. My name is Michaela. Welcome back to the studio. And today I am super excited to be able to welcome a new friend into this space, Mikkel Leslie. Welcome.
Thank you. Yes, well, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to talk a few things with you and see how things overlap.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, these are my favorite types of conversations to have. Firstly, because we get to learn so much about areas of the world that we might not have touched, but then also, of course, come back to those points of commonality and what, comes through our human experience that is connected. So I'm excited to get started. But before we do, I'd love to just orient us, you and me, the viewers out there in the interwebs, by sharing a little bit about you, what I know so far, and that'll help us launch into our conversation. Okay. So, Mikkel, you are a champion. You're an author, you're a coach, and you're a coach for those who are ready to live our own lives. You've coached hundreds of individuals, awakening them to their potential. And before that, you went through your own journey of self exploration. Such a point of commonality already. And you moved from what you were supposed to do to what you're actually passionate about. I bet many folks watching can relate to that, the desire for that, and hopefully also for the experience of it. So your journey started out in engineering and tech and sales and has led you to inspiring others to stand up for our own lives. You, happy viewers, you'll find her on the beach in Southern California, with her husband and her pet plants. I love that. Love relating to plants as our family. And of course, you can learn more about her work at her website, which is afulfilledlifecoaching.com. And that link and all the socials will be in the description down below. And I love that name, A Fulfilled Life, right? Just really evoking for us something that, I imagine the vast majority of us really would like to have.
Yes, it's so true. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, and just, in the interest of continuing to just drop into the space and set our context, I'd love to just start by asking you how you're doing today, just what you're bringing into this conversation in this particular moment.
Yes, right now in this moment, I'm loving life and connecting with you and the audience here and doing what we're doing. I love, love, love sharing about the work that I do because, as you mentioned, so many people can relate. And the more that we can talk about these things, the more that we can see that it's accessible to us and how to do it for us as individuals. So I'm excited to chat. I meditated right before this, so I was like in the zone and we're doing this.
Awesome, awesome. Yeah, such a marker of, being at least somewhat purpose aligned when we feel excited to talk about what we do.
Right,
But
exactly.
not true for me in different points of my life. Yeah, amazing. I am also in a kind of an excited place. There's like life has been coming at me fast and hard lately, and it's been this incredible just charcuterie board of all of the things, like areas of my life where there's a lot of pressure and excitement and deadlines and constriction, areas of my life where there's growth and excitement coming through. Some really, really deep grief things. I've been to three funerals this past couple of months, and just like, oh, they were so exquisite, but also just so much. But all of that really, when I'm able to be in the mindset that it's been my work to help cultivate in myself and others, really landing back on connection is what keeps that center of gravity moving, as we kind of navigate all of that. Yeah.
Yeah. That is a lot, yes.
Yeah, it feels like a potent time to be talking with someone whose work it is to like help people step into their purpose and to remember themselves and to really understand how their particular brain and spirit and heart and mind all come together to be who they are and do what they're meant to do. So I'm excited to have this conversation as well. Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Well, I'd love for you to just share with me and with our friends a little bit about the threads that you followed into this work. You know, our lives are complex, they're diverse. We have these long paths that we've walked to get to this particular moment, and many, many, many threads that weave together into the tapestry of what we are and who we do. And so, my question is, you know, in this moment right now, what are the threads that are most present for you that you want to share with us that led you to doing the work that you do?
Yes, I think right now, like in this particular moment, talking with you and being in this space and talking about what I love, it's leaning back into who I am and really understanding it. We'll get into it deeper probably, but with human design and really understanding that, allowing myself to be who I am. I think for so long in my life, I pushed that away. And like, this is not what I'm supposed to be. I'm supposed to be going to a job 9 to 5, being able to stick in that job for more than a couple of years or more than 6 months even. And so it's really sinking into I can do my life, my way.
Yeah.
And it's wonderful because it's what I teach, it's what I preach, it's what I talk about. And so to be able to really sink into it deeper and deeper, because for all of us, we can always take the deepening into ourselves to the next level of really understanding and uncovering how can I expand into me even more? And so I think over the last couple of years, last couple of months, last couple of weeks, it's become more and more that case where I'm just shedding the layers and being like, okay, what is no longer serving me? Who's not me anymore? And working through those beliefs and concepts and coming to who I am right now in this moment.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, I mean, that's such a relatable, you know, hero's journey, right? You know, I think so many of us have that question of who am I? But like, you know, we may or may not intentionally explore that question. We might not feel the pressure of it, right? There might be a naturally settled sense of who we are. There's definitely been times in my life when that's been true, and there's been times in my life when I've had some sort of external or internal pressure that's really brought it to the front of my mind that I don't actually know. And so I'm just curious, you know, you don't have to share necessarily like personal bits of the story, but I'm just curious if like, you know, that moment or that process of coming to that realization, that decision that there's a trajectory shift that needs to happen inside of me to know who I am more, and then probably externally what I'm then doing in the world. I'm just curious what form or forms that stimulus took, right? Sometimes it's discomfort, sometimes it's insight, sometimes it's a shift in circumstance. So I'm just curious of like, you know, at least kind of categorically, like what was that pressure that you
Oh, yes, I can give you many, many, many examples about this. And this is kind of why I think I kept it more general, is because I go through this so often. So, with all my jobs, there was stress, there was overwhelm, there were so many things coming at me. One, for example, all my work duties kind of got this, it was kind of seasonal, and then my boss didn't really know that. And so they hired me, but then like after a while, I was like, I did all the work, don't have much to do. I can go out and figure out my own stuff, but not really much guidance to do so. And then I got a ticket coming home from work. There was like 3 hours worth of traffic coming back and forth. I'm like, done, too much.
Right.
Another job, similar thing. We were either going to get sold or we're going to bought out. I was a startup, get bought out or go under. And I saw the numbers. I couldn't do my work myself because the engineers I was working with couldn't finish projects, and I was doing sales. So I had to tell the companies that we're working with time and time again, oh, your project's not done. Your project's not done. Oh, we can't take on that work. So I was done with that. Last year within my coaching business, all my clients left out of the blue. Like I went down from 6 that I had like to have, and then down to 0. And I was like, oh, what's happening? The weather in Southern California on the beach at that time was like overcast, cloudy, and foggy. And it was like this deep, dark night of the soul, being like, I don't know what I'm doing, what's going on. And that's where my book came from. And so all of these things led me to my next step, my next journey into myself. And so it's been fun to be able to look back and be like, okay, that was a really hard time, but what came out of it and who did I become? And each time I can see it now as something that is my as a catalyst for the next thing in my life. There's something more ready to be birthed with it all. And so that awareness has helped. Doesn't make it easy, of course, but it does help.
Absolutely. So do you find now that you tend to work with people who are in a similar space in, experiencing pressures at work or situations at work that don't feel aligned, and kind of supporting them to understand where that alignment might come, or I guess more broadly, who is it that you work with?
Yes, I love working with women in their 30s and 40s, especially entrepreneurs, because a lot of them have gone through a stage of the expectations of being the mother, of being the wife, of being all these different roles that society has told them to be, and they're done. They're like, nope, this is not happening. I need to prioritize myself. Like, I come first. Actually, the kids, they do come and they're somewhere, but I get to prioritize me. And so those are the individuals that I love to work with because there's so much opportunity. They're opening up to the possibilities of their life. And so to be able to awaken them to be like, oh, this is what you want? You can actually have that. Let's go out there and help you create that within your life.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I mean, yep, yep. I mean, I'm about to be 47, and this is about a 10-year, I'm about at the 10-year mark from the, awakening to the fact that I was miserable in my life in various important aspects of my life, and that had somehow become acceptable to me over the years, right? Like this kind of slow decline into misery, but also the normalization of that and the like numbing effect that has on our system. And then, yeah, that kind of realization that, oh, this is not acceptable. This is not me. This is like, I'm, approaching the midlife. Is this how the whole second half of life is going to be? Like, now is the time to shift the paradigm of what I'm doing, and had no idea where that was heading and could not have predicted where it landed. But I really, I found good mentors and teachers in that time, and would have absolutely valued someone who was like, let's track this experience that you're in around rediscovering who you are. And it sounds like you can be that person for some folks. Yeah, I love
Yeah,
it.
it's pretty incredible to be able to spark that light within people and be like, let's go, let's do this, and be able to show them that they can do it and do it in ways that really work for them. Because so often we're taught, like, oh, you can have your shiny dream and what you want, but it's going to take a lot of work.
Yeah,
But in reality, when you work with how you work, things come a lot easier.
yeah, yeah. So let's talk a little bit about kind of the specifics of how you do that work, right? So, and I know a lot of this is outlined in your book, which we'll talk a little bit about later, but the title of it is Soar, Live by Living Your Life, Ditch Unhealthy Expectations, and Get After What You Really Want. Yes, please. And so, but you also kind of have broken this work or this coaching framework down into three components. So I'd love to hear you talk maybe a little bit overview about those three components, and then I'd love to dig into human design a little bit.
Yes, of course. Yeah, the first one is human design, is really understanding who you are. Because society tells us that we're all the same. We're all midlife women. Like, we should all fit in the same box and have the same expectations and do life the same way. But in reality, it's not the case. And so with human design, you can really understand how you work. And so if you've like questioned, doubted yourself about like being neurodivergent or have ADHD or autism or all these different things, human design allows us to understand it in a healthy, beautiful way to show you that you have wonderful gifts. And so I love human design because it really shows us how we're different and how we're the same, and really to own our individual gifts. I'll give you an example of when I learned about it. I was driving on the freeway one day. I was like, oh, tuning in, being like, oh, they're talking about human design. I'm curious about it. And then heard about manifestors. And I'm a manifester. And they're like, telling me about it, and I started to cry on the freeway because the relief that I had with learning that there's nothing wrong with me, that I'm actually doing what I'm supposed to be doing, that I can actually lean into it more and have a more fulfilled life,
Yeah.
it was life changing. And so
Yeah.
it's incredible to bring this to individuals and show them there's nothing wrong with them. And this is actually how you can work with yourself on the best way possible.
Yeah.
So that's the first way.
Yeah. And it sounds like that leads into the second way, which is around worthiness. Yeah. What's
It
the
is so
there?
true. Yeah, because once you know who you are and who you're not, you can ditch all of those unhealthy beliefs that have been holding you back for so long within your life.
Yeah.
And so I really advocate for that sense of worthiness, of understanding that out of the womb, you are worthy. And throughout life, all these different expectations, these different beliefs have been put upon you to say that you are not. You're not good enough. Why are you trying? Why are you doing that? You should be perfect. Why aren't you smiling? And so stepping into your worthiness, you take your power back. You really understand who you are and how you work and really own that you can do it, that what you want is available to you. And that then transition to the third step, which is understanding what it is that you want over anyone else, and then going after it in ways that really work for you, using your human design, using joy, celebration, accomplishments, and really tuning into having fun along the way rather than it being a grind.
Mm, mm. Yeah, there's something so deliciously countercultural about all of that, right? You know, and you named some of it, the like expectation that we fit into a box, that we at least routinize ourselves enough that we can flow with the structure that we've been given. And there's nothing wrong with structure. I definitely can always use a little more structure in my life, but you know, we all know places in society where that structure becomes a prison and it becomes something that works against our own liberation and ultimately works against us actually being able to contribute positively to ourselves or to others. And that worthiness piece is such an important one because you know, I mean, similarly, to you, you know, I have a way of being, and I know we'll get a little bit more into the types within human design. But you know, it's very easy to focus on the aspects of our particular way of being in the world, right? And so you mentioned, you know, ADHD and other forms of neurospiciness that, you know, we now know comes on such a wider, diverse spectrum than normal and abnormal, which is kind of how it has been presented to us. And that each one of those places has gifts and challenges, right? And that they mirror each other. You know, superpowers and our foibles, and they're related. But so often you know, unless we happen to have the superpower that is valued by society, we are directed to pay attention to the places where we're insufficient in how we are, as opposed to seeing that humanity is actually supposed to be interconnected and interlocked, right? And so, you know, my manifester needs people who can build the things that I can vision, people who can follow through with them, can see them through to completion, because I struggle to do that very, very much. And so that worthiness piece, you know, following on coming to understand how we actually are, how we think, how we operate, how we follow the flow of life is so important because so many of us have been taught to feel like we're not worthy, if we're not doing what
Yes.
we're supposed to be doing. And then we can't actually do much of anything when we're in that place. Or, you know, like me, I worked a job that I loved on paper. It was meaningful. It was you know, focusing on, I was training undergraduate students to do leadership development and social justice realms, things I was incredibly passionate about. But the mechanics of doing the job, the administrative aspects, the kind of rigidity of deadlines and so on, like I was just bad at it, you know. So I, you know, internalized this belief that like I'm bad at work, you know, when actually I have a tremendous amount of genius in the parts of the job that really lit me up, but I just wasn't that good in the other pieces. So that worthiness piece. And then once we feel like, yeah, we're worth contributing in the way that we're meant to contribute, so what am I supposed to do? What is it that how am I supposed to contribute, right? And let's lean into that with some juiciness. So yeah, thank you for that overview. So I'd love to circle back to just human design as a practice, and you know, kind of root this in you know where on this in this conversation we often circle around, which is the qualities of living our life grounded, spacious, and connected. and remembering ourselves. And we've already spoken a bit to those qualities, but I'd love to have you just describe what human design is as a structure. I notice perhaps a correlation between your background as an engineer and the way that human design as a system of organizing our thoughts is created. And I'd love to just have you describe what is this tool.
Yes, it is a combination of 5 different modalities of amazingness, I will say. So, like astrology is a big part of it, the I Ching, tree of life. There's all these different components that have come together to create what it is. And so I love that those things are connected together with it all, but it has a science background as well. And quantum physics is in there, and there's different elements of it that really allows us to tune into who we are. So it's all based off of your birth date, your time, the location of you coming onto this earth and who you became in that moment when you were born. And
Mm,
it's incredible how, when we take a look at that time and space, what who you became in that moment in time, who you dropped into being
mm,
and infiltrated into this world and took away then what it is that you need to on this journey of life that we have today. And so it can be as complex as you want it, or it can be as simple as you want it. And oftentimes when people see their human design chart, they're like, oh, it's too much, I don't know. So first area that I like to focus on with individuals is their type and strategy. Those 2 areas really help you to give you an idea and baseline of what it is. And you already mentioned your type as a manifester. And so I'm a manifester too, by the way. So this will be fun to talk about a little bit more in depth. But human design, I like to call it too, allows us to see that we all are puzzle pieces. As you mentioned, like we're all different. We all kind of come together to create this. But human design really shows us that each of us has our role, has our different component that we can really lean into, that when we come together with all of individual puzzle pieces, we can create this beautiful picture of the world that we live in today. And when we don't really sink into our own puzzle pieces, where we try to fit into everyone else, we can't make the puzzle, the picture of what we're trying to create with it all. So it really allows you to become who you are.
yeah, absolutely. I love that. My father is an astrologer and an I Ching caster and has been since he was a teenager. Um, and so, yeah, like a lot of the language and frameworks that I've, in my limited interactions with human design, like have this familiarity, I think, from that proximity. And he and I had a great conversation in another Reiki Crossroads and Connections episode. I'll go ahead and link that one down below for any of y'all who want to meet my dad, who's a super interesting person. I heard him talk about the I Ching and astrology and synchronicity and the music of Wagner. Um, but this idea of, using these, ancient patterns that humanity has recognized and this relationship that we have developed with the world around us. I mean, astrology is, it's our interpretation of things that we're observing, but it's an in-depth relationship with the world around us, and then utilizing the observations of the external to actually observe the internal, right? To reflect what's happening inside of ourselves. And similarly with the I Ching and kind of leaning into the fact of synchronicity in the world as again, a point of reflection for understanding ourselves better and therefore how we're meant to interact with the world. So there's this cycle of, turning inward and turning outward and then using what we observe outside to come back to assess and be more deep on the inside, and therefore go back outside to be more effective and in better partnership with the world. And I'm wondering if the strategies and the types inside of human design kind of lead us in a similar cycle of relationship with the world.
I like to explain it as such. So you mentioned human design as a practice, and I see it as that, where you can lean into it and then kind of do life, and then lean back in and see like, oh, what shifted, what changed? How can I actually see that differently? How does it actually resonate with myself on a deeper level? And each time you do that with the types, with the strategy, with everything else, you see it in a different view. And the strategy specifically, really, there's 5 different types in human design, and each of them have a different strategy of going about life and the way that's really going to bring more ease into your life. And so I love this element because all 5 of those things are good for us all to do, But your specific one, like as a manifester, is to inform, to tell people what you're doing, to tell people what you want to do, what you envision. And all these different things allow you to take that next step and have less resistance in your life. And it's the one main thing that you can focus on, being like, okay, if I do nothing else besides this one thing, it's going to bring more ease, more peace
Yeah.
into my life, which is beautiful to have that one thing that allows you to focus on over everything else.
I want to ask you in a minute to just kind of briefly name the 5 types and maybe just a quick description of them, but just because something just really sparked about what you just said. I've never heard manifestor described in the way that you just did, and around the importance of communicating and like being and like clarity about intentions and everything that you just said. And the thing that clicked was like the interaction of that type with kind of lifelong introversion and like significant periods of like self-doubt where I don't want to communicate, right? I'm inhibited from saying what I want and what I vision because it's not going to be good enough. It's not going to be taken. It's going to be rejected, like deep rejection, abandonment stuff, old stuff, that sometimes comes forward and is like, don't say it, don't say what you want. And so just the clicking was like, wow, those two parts of myself, like I can think of specific times when they were just in so much conflict with each other. And so that makes me curious. And now I'm battling two things because I want you to describe the types, but I'm going to put a pin in this one, because it feels like then that work with worthiness is so essential because, really when it comes down to it, those moments where I'm like, I can't actually say the thing that's trying to manifest because I'm not worthy could be the summary, prevented that from happening. So let's put a pin in that. But just for context, I'd love to have you describe those 5 types and a little bit about the description of the strategy.
Yes, yes. So generators make up most of the population. So we'll start with them. They are, I like to call them worker bees, in a way, because they're here to get down and dirty with what they love and just do that. So they're ones that can focus on a task, they love it, and do it for a long time. Not the other types are not that case. So it's wonderful that they can just sit down and focus on that when it is something that they love. So for generators, their strategy is to respond.
Mhm.
And to respond is to open up and see within their world what things they can say yes or no to. So it could be the birds chirping in the morning, the sun coming in. Like, oh, that's an invitation to be able to wake up for the day. Do I want to wake up? Okay, yeah, let's like wake up for the day. So seeing those little things within life and being able to then respond to them. It's not sitting on your thumbs and being like, I just gotta wait and respond and do nothing with it all and wait for things to come to you. You still take action, you still do what you know you need to do, but it is allowing yourself to open up and trust that things also come to you in magical ways. And when you see that and notice it, then things can come to you.
Nice.
Second, we'll talk about as manifestors, which you already mentioned a little bit. And they are ones that, as you mentioned, see a bigger vision, see where we can go as a society and help drive us to change. It's one of the reasons why in my bio it says change maker, because we're here to make an impact and show us where we're not in alignment and where we can push ourselves forward with it all. So when we're in alignment as manifestors, we're going to speak our mind, we're going to be pushing boundaries, we're going to be going and doing things. And so the strategy for them is to inform, to tell people what's going on, what's occurring. So one practice that I'm doing more regularly is sharing with my audience what I'm working on now. So after this podcast, I'll be sharing, I was on a podcast, check it out when it drops. So all those different things and keeping people aware of what you're doing and what you're envisioning for the future. This really comes in handy when you're talking about partners because so many issues can come up when you do not tell them what's going on and what you envision.
Yep.
The third one is manifesting generators, and they are, as you can probably assume, a combination of manifestors and generators. And they are ones that are multi-passionate. Sitting down and like focusing on just one thing is kind of hard for them, but they like to have multiple different passions that are able to play out. They go from seeing things, something, wanting something, and making it happen really quickly when they are in alignment, when it feels like that yes for them. So they still want to wait and respond a bit with the things that they want and open up their awareness to the things that are coming towards them. But then also with their strategy, they also want to inform, to tell others around them, tell the world what they're doing, what they're envisioning, what they're making happen. And in that way, support and understanding can come from everyone around them. Then we have projectors. And Projectors are our new age leaders. They are ones that are here to help us grow as a society and see all the individual components of companies, of organizations, of countries, of different areas, and see how each individual piece plays into them. So they're able to see those connections, to see who's best suited for one role or another, as well as they have some deep-seated wisdom that they can share. But their strategy is to wait for an invitation. So oftentimes, what I see with projectors when they're starting into this realm of trying to understand what's going on, they're seeing a lot of resistance. They're not in the role where others respect their opinion, or they're not seen for the leader or the wisdom that they have. And so it's changing that up a little bit and being like, okay, you can leave, or you can start talking about all the amazing knowledge and wisdom that you have. And so waiting for that invitation looks like seeing the opportunities that are presented to them, similar to generators in a way, but opening up and being like, oh, I heard someone talk about a podcast. I would love to be on that podcast. And them saying like, oh, I want to have guests. And be like, oh, I want to be a guest. And seeing those connections for it all. It's not always being like, I invite you with a formal invitation. It can be subtler things as well. And then lastly, we have reflectors. And they represent 1% of the world. And they are these amazing beings that come into this world to be full of awe and wonder, and come to this world to be able to share with us and reflect back to us who we are, what we're doing, all our insecurities, what we're doing well. They really do reflect society, individuals, everyone and anything around them. And so with that, they get to come to any space, anytime, with this openness, this wonder, this curiosity of being like, okay, what's today going to be like? What's going to happen today? And their strategy is to wait a lunar cycle to make decisions and to see things differently, because each day, each place they are a different person because of everything that they're picking up. So that waiting that lunar cycle allows them to then see how their world is impacted by the lunar cycle through all the different phases of moving through all the different types that they move through the course of the month too. So those are the 5 types.
Wow. That's so, I've always been so fascinated by these various like systems of reflection and assessment that are developed, the Myers-Briggs and values assessments and, all of these different assessments that have been, strengths finders and so many. Working in higher ed, working in leadership development, like I've interfaced with so many of these types of systems. And I don't know that I've ever encountered one that wasn't valuable in some way, right? At least the ones that have made it to like the, universities willing to pay for them, right? Like once they've gotten there, they've proven themselves to be valuable. But they're all, of course, coming at it from a different perspective, right? They can't all, with one exception. I have encountered one that I think actually can show you about as much as an external assessment can show you about who you are. Extremely comprehensive and incredibly difficult to navigate. I actually trained in it to help coach people with it, and I was like, man, I just need to sit with this for a couple of years before I can even take it out into the world. But I digress. They all have something to show us about who we are, right? And work together. And I love the way that this one seems to take a look at it's almost like the basis of comparison is like, what is each person's relationship with the world? And therefore, how do they choose to interface with the world, right? Does that feel kind of?
Yeah, I'm writing down how you explained it because I love that language of that relationship with the world and how we show up with it all. That's how the type is really kind of construed and presented to us as being like, okay, how do you interact with the world? How do you show up?
Right.
And provides that basis for it.
Yeah, yeah. And as you were going through them, as I mentioned to you before, and audience, I'll let you in on it. I haven't ever gone through my human design type thoroughly. I really want to. But I have a friend who does it, and she had kind of said, oh, this is the type you are. And the word that stuck in my head was manifester, probably because that's a word that's so around there. But as you were going through it, I'm like, nope, it wasn't that. It was reflector. And as you were describing it, again, finding these connections to other points of assessment that I've done that like, oh, that makes this make sense. And from that values assessment that I just mentioned, that's so comprehensive that I trained in, one of the things that showed is that one of my highest values, that one is based on an assessment of about 150 like values that are universal in humanity. And then how do those values like make this alchemy inside of each person of their unique way of moving through the world, and then mapping that on the kind of progress that humans can make in relationship to society from like basic survival up through kind of actualization and so on. But one of my highest values in that assessment is leisure, and they describe leisure as things that you're as passionate about as your work, but aren't your work. And and that people who have a high value for leisure want to cultivate love and perspectives in a lot of different realms, and then take time to be inside of them. And that thing about being inside of a lunar cycle and like being with something and observing it and reflecting it was something that I had a lot of shame about, because it takes so long to get anything done when you're in that space. And when that values assessment was like, yeah, you value leisure, I'm like, great, so I'm lazy. That's what you're saying. That's who I am. My fundamental core highest value is to like lie around and do nothing. The coach is like, no, that's not at all what it's saying. It's saying that you are in love with life and you don't want to just like be focused in the one realm. And that you need to take your time, right, to get things done. And I was like, oh, okay, that makes a lot of sense. And so I think just, partly just riffing off of what you said for a little piece of my own continued self-understanding, is to also just kind of bring forward for all of us that these systems can really help us put together that puzzle pieces of our internal landscape, right? How do these different ways of assessing how it is to be a human, how can they fit together and help us, understand our superpowers, make the most of them, release shame about the parts of ourself that are not strong, but like they're not strong because we're bad, they're not strong because our strengths are somewhere else, right? And hey, the way it's supposed to be is we are in community with people who have those strengths that we don't have, right? Which kind of falls into that third category that you described, right? Knowing what you want and how to go after it. Part of that must involve, being in community with the people who fit in the puzzle pieces that we don't have. Yeah.
Right.
Does
Yes,
that
totally.
tend to come up with your clients? Who are they surrounded?
Yeah. So oftentimes, um, generators and manifesting generators are ones that have a lot of sustained energy over time for things that they love. Manifestors, projectors, reflectors do not. Point blank, they do not. They will not be probably working 8 hours a day on the same thing.
That's
They'll have
interesting.
those
I'm
rest
not a
days.
manifester because the sustained energy, it's not a thing.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. And that was something that I had learned for myself as a manifester, and that so manifesting generators have that sustained energy as well as generators, just for clarification. So the ones that do not are manifestors, projectors, and reflectors. So
Gotcha.
myself as a manifester, I had to come to that term of being like, okay, working 8 hours a day, doing the same thing over and over again is not for me. Like, it's not going to happen. Being on the phone, trying to do sales all day, not going to work out for me. And so it was a learning curve of it all. But as you mentioned, we all have our strengths. And I see also like the individuals that don't have the sustained energy are teaching us how to rest, how to relax, how to take our time, our space, our time. There's so many benefits associated with that, even for generators and manifesting generators, that allows them to open up and see the potentials of what's occurring. Because when we're heads down and working all the time, it's not gonna, life gets boring and repetitive and not so great all the time. But we
Yeah.
can open up and see what's possible. It's wonderful. But the original question was, talking about how we can all come together to support visions of what we're creating. And yes, it's beautiful to see how when we come together, so like for myself, a manifester, and other projectors and reflectors, having a team to be able to help support can go a long way. And this team could be things like cleaners, or it could be a virtual assistant, or it could be a child that helps with different things, or a partner that realizes some days you're not going to want to make dinner, and that's okay. Just communicating that can go a long way with it all. And so we all have our teams and support, and the more that we can see how we all come together to propel us forward, the more we can rely on them and be able to lean on them when we need them so we can ourselves shine and propel us all forward.
Yeah. Yeah, that piece around team, it feels really poignant. Like, as a solopreneur, I mean, you mentioned that a lot of the people you work with are, entrepreneurs and probably a lot of folks who work for themselves and
Yeah.
maybe are just them, or maybe they have that small team. And that was such a hard, learning curve for me, right? Because, like, firstly, carrying that kind of myth that we're supposed to be able to do everything on ourselves, and then feeling like, oh, it's just me. I gotta conserve resources. I can't afford to hire somebody, so I gotta do it all. And now I'm 7 years into that, and it's just not the way it's meant to be. And so finding those ways of within one's means and through one's creativity to cultivate that team, however that looks. And I've found some creative ways of doing that, but there's definitely there's aspects of the work that I would just love to hand off to a consistent other employee, to help get that done. But there's seasons of a business where that's just not a possibility. I wonder if that's something that you talk with people about, kind of how to navigate, like, the reality of what is really needed to make something flourish, and then kind of meeting the reality of the resources at that time.
Yes, totally. I think today more than ever, automation and connection and community can go a long way to fill those gaps that we may typically see, like, oh, I need a VA, I need an online business manager, I need someone else to manage this. But there's so many different ways nowadays to be able to automate things, automate social media, automate emails, automate these different things so that you can do you and just have it go off in the background.
Yeah.
And then we also have community. So I'm actually part of a community called Hype HQ, and they are a group of individuals coming together to raise each other up and to spread our message even further. And so that's a wonderful community for me as a manifester because I only have so much time and space and energy to spread my message. And another way for me is podcasting. So this podcast will go out to lots of different people. And so finding different ways that work for you is huge. It doesn't have to be the typical route. And so being creative, seeing what really lights you up and gets you excited will go a long ways. And figuring out how we can work with you and your current situation, it's possible. There are ways to do it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's no accident that this kind of boom in solopreneurs and people creating businesses out of their own particular genius and niches that they fill is coinciding with the technological advances that allow us to automate things, right? Because, you know, I don't know what I would do if Calendly didn't, like, manage appointment setting. Like, I mean, the first year or two of my business, it was like any client, any appointment, any meeting, it was a series of back and forth emails trying to schedule it. Like that, like, I can't imagine that still being the reality, right? And then just all of the pieces that that technology can do for us, I do really very much appreciate it. And as you're talking, can really see that those aren't just conveniences. They actually, for certain types of businesses, certain types of people, are actually what makes it possible to make it. And then, yeah, leaning into community and the fact that online spaces allow us to expand that community in ways that were never possible before. They certainly weren't possible when I was coming up, when I was in college even. Um, and the fact that you and I can sit down and have this conversation from different parts of the state, different parts of the country with other folks, different parts of the world, really, it makes it feel less lonely, to be in this effort and to be whatever type that we are. We can find those people. And I also it's an accountability group of folks who do similar work, solopreneurs, and we've met every Wednesday for about 3 years. And I mean, I honestly, I don't think it's a hyperbole to say that, like, having that group has kept my business alive, because it's that point of connection and accountability, and, like, a place to talk about the visions, and to, like, when it's in those long periods of rest that I get into, I can still talk to them about what I'm dreaming of and what I'm visioning, and they can help me keep it alive while I'm not able to do the things that need to be done. So I appreciated you bringing that piece in. Yeah. So
Sure.
I know a lot of this is outlined in your book, and I'd love for you to just talk a little bit about that resource and just what people can receive from that resource, and of course how they can get their hands on it.
Yes. The book is my blood, sweat, and tears and my gift to the world all in one. It is inspiration, it is motivation. It's going to kick you in the ass with a kind hand, and it's going to help motivate you to be who you are meant to be. It's a guide, it's something that you can reference time and time again. It's something you can read once and be done with, or you can dig into and dive deeper into and use as that reference guide. It is a beautiful piece of art that really helps you to open up to who you are. It has a human design, it has the worthiness. It helps guide you to understand what it is you want and how to go about it in ways that really work for you. And so you can enjoy the ride along the way. And it is told in a conversational, spiritual friend because we have the human design there as well. And I'm cursing in it because I get excited. And when I get super excited, I'm going to curse and I'm going to tell you, yeah, this is stupid. This is effed up. Like, no, we shouldn't be doing this.
Yeah.
So expect that as you go through it.
This is a
And
cursing welcome zone. So if you need
oh,
fuck, you can say fuck on this podcast, just so you know.
well, thank you so much. Well, fuck. Yes. Yes, and for the audience, I would love to gift you the first chapter of my book so you can get some inspiration, some motivation, some drive into where we're going. And the first chapter is an outline of why we're at right now and really dive into, okay, you might feel like a perfectionist. Why? What's happened in society for us to lead this way? And then what can you do about it? How can you dive into yourself to reopen what you can be for this world?
That's amazing, and it's very generous to make that offer, and that will be in the links in the description of this video. So any of you watching this video can go down there into the description and access that first chapter for free. Thank you so much.
Yes, you're so welcome.
So we've touched on a lot of pieces. I'm curious if there's anything else that you know that's on your heart to share that we haven't had a chance to touch on yet today.
The first thing that came up was you're a badass. Like everyone on this call has gifts, has strengths, has power. And we didn't come back to that worthiness bit of not being able to speak up and speak out. Um, and know that there's so much baggage, so much things that we go through in life that can hold us back from who we are meant to be. But each time you come back to you, each time you open up and ask yourself, what is it that I want to do? How do I want to show up today? What do I want to say? There's so much that can be had for not just yourself, but your children, your spouse, your friends, your family, your work, that really opens up to what can be. So if motivating to become yourself is hard for yourself because you put yourself on the back burner for so long, you can also do it for your kids, for your partner, for your work, for everyone else around you too. Because if by lifting up yourself, you're going to lift up everything around you. So it's not just something for you, it's something for the world. And people really will really see that impact of it.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you for the reminder. We had a pin in the worthiness piece, and I'm curious if there's if there's an example that you could share of kind of specifically how you work with people around worthiness. Like, is there a practice or a technique, or is it more about the conversation that kind of really supports that piece?
Yeah, I'll start with the first bit that I like to dive in with individuals, and it's understanding what's going on. What
Mm,
makes you feel like you are unworthy? Because if there's just big, dreaded like pressure and fog with on you, and you don't know what's going on, don't know what's there, it can be really hard to dive in and try to correct it. But the more that we can bring awareness to it, and one tool that I love to utilize with this is mindfulness, of just being present, allowing space and time to do nothing if you can allow yourself to do it, or just focusing on one thing at a time, or using meditation. There's several different ways that we can bring mindfulness to our lives. And the more present we are, the more we can breathe, the more we can relax, the more we can see what's actually going on. So
yeah.
permission to do absolutely nothing for 1 minute, 5 minutes, an hour, more if you need to or want to. You can do that for yourself and see what comes up. So the first step within diving into understanding your worthiness is seeing what's there. What comes up when you think about worthiness? What's holding you back from stepping into it more? And then there's lots more steps within my book.
Yeah, amazing. Yeah, yeah, and that's, that's another place of commonality there. The system of Reiki, which I teach from the perspective of its Japanese origins, has its roots in Shingon Buddhism, and so working with, various types of mindfulness practices that, come through these different perspectives within the kind of vast world of Buddhism. Are so embedded into that system of practice, and they, really help us to do that work of turning inward, of, getting grounded, feeling like we're fundamentally safe and resourced, and we have our feet on the ground, we're in touch with our body and with the earth, and then coming to that space of spaciousness, of openness, of possibility, and then to that place of connection. I can absolutely understand from what you're saying, but also reflect on my own experience with my practice, the way that those qualities build that sense of worthiness, right? Because when we feel ourselves connected and, a precious and essential component of the web of life, and at the same time, no different, no better, no worse than the web of life, then worthiness is just, it's just inherent, where it's like everything that's inside of the web of life is worthy because it's necessary. So I can absolutely see how embedding those types of practices into your work really fuses well with that starting point of understanding who we are, how we are, and then the end point of understanding what to do about it, and what action to
Mhm.
take in the world. Oh, I love it. So juicy, so elegant. Mm. Thank you so much for having this conversation with me today. I've really been wanting to dive into human design in this space, have a conversation with somebody who works in that realm. So thank you so much for bringing that perspective to our exploration of practices that help us live grounded, spacious, connected lives. And I'd love to just end by inviting you to share just one thing that's bringing you joy these days in
Mhm.
general, or today in particular. What's bringing joy into your heart today?
Yes. I'll mention one slash two things with all this. I've been meditating more heavily and going deeper into my meditations, and that has been beautiful and eye-opening to what I can feel, what can I experience, moving energy. Like there's so much that can be had in that space for me. And so that has been beautiful and bringing so much joy. My husband will like see me having a hard time sometimes and be like, do you want to meditate? And I'm like, no, but yes. So then I go meditate. Uh,
So
so I
important
don't know
to
what to
have
do
that
sometimes.
team, right?
I
People
know,
up
right?
the things
Yeah.
we can't see.
That's so true. And then I'm also creating meditations for the different human design types. And so that has been beautiful to create and focus in on each individual type and the message that they need to hear. And I listened to the one I created for manifestors earlier, and I'm like, it's so, oh my goodness, yes. Just to be able to see and
Sing it
heard in the different
along.
ways. So it's been beautiful.
Amazing. Yeah, that's really exciting, and I know that that should be showing up on your website in the future. So folks, do check back for that resource. I think that's going to be a really powerful resource, and potentially a really great place to get started with exploring your own human design type and what that might mean for the purpose that you feel driven by, the contribution that you are meant to make to the world. And I will just say that bringing joy to my life these last couple of weeks has been reconnecting with community that I haven't been connected with. And, I mentioned having three funerals in the past couple of months, and each one of them involved reconnecting with people that are dear to me that I haven't seen in a really long time. And one of them was particularly just heartbreakingly poignant to have that reconnection in that context. And I think what's bringing joy is the fact that, I'm in a place in my life where I can make enough space that in a space of grieving, that really what's actually at the center of it is connection and love. And that there's enough room inside for both of those things to be true, so that the thing that actually is generating the grief is the thing that I get to be inside of, is the love and the connection. And it just, yeah, it brings me great joy to just have the capacity to hold all of that, and then to help to reflect to other people that they also have that capacity. So that aspect of my work has been reflected back to me in these incredibly personal, tender moments over the last few weeks, and I'm really grateful for them, and I feel joyful for them. I just spent the last couple of days with a woman who was my student 15 years ago when I was working in university, came back for this funeral, and we just were like meeting each other in a whole different stage of life, not with this power dynamic of like student and professor and like just like, oh, we're the same, like, we get to be friends now, like, we get to do something else now because this happened. So a lot of joy happening inside of that.
Love that.
Beautiful. Well, Mikkel, thank you so much for joining me. Friends, there has been something in this conversation that has touched you, that has tickled your curiosity, that has opened up an insight for you, that's felt familiar or curious or confusing, that I know you would love to reach out about. So please do drop your reflections, your comments, your questions down in the comment section down below. And if this work feels juicy, if it feels like it's calling you, if something in this conversation was like, yes, I need that in my life, please do get in touch with Mikkel. All of the ways to do that will be down below. I'm pretty sure you will be glad that you did. And definitely grab that first chapter of the book. That could be the perfect breadcrumb to start your journey with. So thank you all for joining us on Reiki Crossroads and Connections. As you move into your day from here, may you be deeply provisioned for that journey. Thanks so much. We love you. Goodbye.